you, but I just wanted to touch on a few topics on the oxygen itself. It come back up in this last survey about how you store your oxygen. You guys got to make sure that all of your oxygen tanks are set in one of those little cylinders that they bring. It's usually a 6-pack or an 8-pack. They have to be in one of those, stored upright in the oxygen room. I think out here in Brandon, you still do it in the bedrooms on the neighborhoods. They also mentioned that you got to have your empties away from your fulls. So you're going to have an empty storage with an empty sign and a full sign. If a resident is on hospice, you also need to keep those tanks separate from your bulk tanks too. So the biggest thing is make sure that they're stored in an upright position, in a holder. They can be in the little rollers if you want, that's fine too. But if you ever see a tank laying down in a resident's room or stored in the closet, you need to get it out of there right away, okay? There's 2 types. You can have a tank for a resident or you can have the concentrators in the rooms. They're the same oxygen. The biggest thing is if a resident goes out of a room and they're 24/7 on a concentrator and you're hooking them up to a tank, when you bring them back into the room, make sure that that tank is turned off and that resident is rehooked up to the concentrator. I found a couple times I'm walking into a room, a resident is sitting there with the tank on and the tank is empty and their concentrator is running and they're not hooked up to it. Their oxygen levels are down below 90. You guys got to remember to turn those tanks off. You've wasted air, out of a tank. Hook them back up to that concentrator right away.
Keep the tank, like if they have a strap that's on their wheelchair behind them, and it's off, can it stay stored there?
It can stay in there,
Okay.
yeah. It's not going to tip over.
Even though it's not in them? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. CNAs and nurses both, you guys both know how to use that regulator. If you don't know how to turn that regulator off, you need to come to a nurse or somebody that knows how to change the regulators and change tanks and make sure that you're using a little key to turn it on and off. You turn it clockwise to turn the air on and then just clockwise to turn it off. Don't just turn the dial down to 0. You need to get rid of that, turn the tank off completely. It could have a small leak. You're just letting the oxygen leak into the air. CNAs, you cannot change that O2 level. If a resident is complaining about being short of breath, you cannot go into that room and turn that air up just a little bit so that they get a little more oxygen. That resident needs to be assessed by a nurse. The nurse will come in, the nurse will decide if we need to turn that up. They will then call the physician and make sure that it's okay that we're turning that oxygen up. So if you see that a resident is struggling on 2 liters, you need to go get your nurse right away and let them come in and let them know that their O2 level is below 90 or that they're struggling, okay? When you're putting them in the room, make sure that that tubing is not a tripping hazard. Don't just leave it lay across the room. Make sure that you're picking it up, you're putting it away. If you're changing them over to a tank, you're not leaving that oxygen tubing laying right on the floor. Pick it up, put it in a bag, and store it away so it stays clean. You don't want to pick that back up after it's been laying on the floor and stick it back in their nose. So keep that resident safe from getting any sort of infection. And then when you have a resident on oxygen, you need to make sure that they have that no smoking sign on the door frame and an oxygen in use sign on the door frame. If there's not, you need to let the nurse know or somebody know so we can get those signs put up. Okay? Any questions? Katie will go over the test.
All right. So number 1, can you use Vaseline on a resident's nares that are sore from using a nasal cannula? No, because it's flammable. True or false? Oxygen canisters can be stored in a resident's closet in their room. False. What is the name of the device that controls the O2 flow from the cannula? Regulator. Yeah. Regulator. When the power goes out, what outlets do you need to plug the oxygen into? Red. Which way do you turn the cylinder valve to open the tank? Clockwise. There needs to be a sign on the outside of the residence room saying oxygen in use, no smoking. True or false? True. When should the oxygen tubing be changed? Twice a month, the 1st and the 15th. And out in Brandon, we actually have our Bethany U students doing that now, so the nurses don't have to worry about that. How often should the oxygen filters be cleaned? Monthly. And we also have our Bethany U students doing that out here. The last one? Monthly, yep. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.